Grand opening, grand closing.
Welcome, my friends, my family, my fellow gamers. Your only friend these YouTube streets, Portorock77, back with another video, particularly talking about PlayStation remasters and remakes. All right, looking at Days Gone. Days Gone's out, and I'm just seeing comments, seeing people do comparisons between the game, between the version, and it just had me thinking that if Sony's gonna continue with a remaster remake strategy, they really need to focus on PS3 catalog. And here's why. Uh, I think Sony has given remake and remasters a bad name, or at least added fueled a little bit of controversy or issues to it. Remaking PS4 games has been a mixed bag. Some love it, others don't, right? But it has been a mixed bag. When you get how other publishers done and focus on their remakes, right? The ones that focus on older catalog of titles, majority of them have been positive reception. Most recent one has been Oblivion and Elder Scrolls, right? The reception over Oblivion getting a remaster has been primarily well received, right? Now, of course, there's maybe issues on PC and ports and things like that, but the fundamental idea that this game, the decision to make a remaster for this game, has been overwhelmingly positive. Now, the reason why I say overwhelmingly, because it hasn't been absolutely positive across the board, because there's a few who have issues with it, but primarily as a, how would you say, it's being used as a case to defend PlayStation's decision for remastering. Like, oh, who asked for this? Why are we asking for remasters? Oh, now all of a sudden remaster is good. And I don't think for those, they don't fundamentally understand that remake and remasters as a principle is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. It's when you apply to use it and when you choose to use it, right? I say that the focus for Sony should be focusing on PS3, especially PS3. PS2, I think now once you go to those games and PS1 games, I think now you're talking full-blown remake, like outright, just start from scratch. Use the PS2 and PS1 games as, the influence to develop the new game built from the ground up, right? But I think at that point you have to build this from scratch. That's too far behind. PS3, maybe modify it or do what Oblivion did. Do what the developers who remastered Oblivion, where new animations, new fighting combats, there's a lot. They went into a lot to that game, right? But here's the thing. This is why, just to get to the so why on why I think Sony, PlayStation will be better off focusing on PS3 for remasters than their own PS4. Number one, PS4 already has backwards compatibility, so you can play those games on your PS5. Sure, the remaster remakes spruces it up, but you still have the game. You could do a quick patch to give it better. But sure, remaking or remastering provides a little bit boost. But with the PS3, some of those games aren't even playable on the PS5. You just can't play them, right? And even if you can, let's say if you can, I don't think people remember like the PS3 era of terms and games of performance it's let me put it this way. If you're enjoying the PS5, especially the PS5 Pro, when you replay those games as they are, they're pretty bad. They did not age well, right? PS3 at best, a lot of those games lock 30, if it is lock 30, and maybe 720p. Sometimes even under that, right? So Oblivion, we'll use Oblivion example. Yeah, you're not replaying that. The PS3 version. The PS3 version wasn't even locked 30. It was stuttering. I remember playing that game. Loading was terrible. It was just a lot, right? But now I could say it's terrible. Back then, it was bad, right? Or it wasn't that good. But with the standards of PlayStation being raised, especially the new standards PlayStation 5 created with 60 frames, performance mode, PlayStation 5 is the best hardware PlayStation has ever created, and definitely the best hardware this gen for consoles, especially best consoles, right? I say best console hardware overall. It's just a great console. So when you play on it all the time, the new standard for yourself set, it's because it's what you have access to. You go back to play a PS3 game, you're going to be like, whoa, this is bad, only because you're used to the new standard, right? So a PS3 game being remastered, you will see the benefits of the improvement at a much bigger scale. Like the gap of improvement will be much bigger compared to a PS4 remaster, if you know what I mean, right? Just on the sake of, just the trials and tribulations what people go through, or what developers went through with the PS3, right? So that's one. You'll see a much bigger benefit improvement from one game over another because the gap is so huge, right? So now you're looking at Metal Gear Solid 4, right? If you remember, when you beat one chapter, you had to wait like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You see, like, Snake smoking the cigarettes because, the Blue Day Risk was so slow. It took a while to load into the hard drive and stuff. So they used a hard drive to speed it up. But a lot of the textures and graphic capabilities, you had to wait like 2 to 3 minutes between stages to load. And not stages, but chapters, right? That's how they did it, right? So that will be completely eliminated, right? You'll have, 4K, with pixel technologies, or however they decide to do it. 60 frames, better textures, better settings, just everything, right? Improved animations, just everything will be just so much better, going from the original MGS4, and you can finally play it natively on your console, which you right now Metal Gear Solid 4 is locked on a PS3. That is just done. Only way to play it, I think, is maybe through cloud, if they even did it through cloud, which I don't think they did, because I don't remember hearing news of a Metal Gear Solid 3 now being part of PS Premium where you could play through cloud. I'm not sure about that, right? So I don't think you can even do that. I think that game is just lost forever, at least to us console players, unless a remake or remaster is decided. But that's like what I'm talking about. Like how do we have a Days Gone? Now, and I guess, well, let me present the question. How do we have a Days Gone remaster and not a Metal Gear Solid 4 remaster? I'm sorry, but Metal Gear Solid 4 is a much bigger, more impactful title for the PlayStation brand than Days Gone. It's just the two doesn't compare. It literally is the bigger title, the bigger impact, and one of the big reasons why PS3 was able to survive that generation and actually come back and sell. Metal Gear Solid 4 was a big part of that as an exclusive. So that should have been like a huge priority. But instead, we got Days Gone. Now, of course, there's reasons. Licensing, deals with Konami, and Days Gone is just easier. It's more simple. So Sony went with the simplistic route, right? But I think the simplistic route doesn't help with the overall, intent of remastering and remaking games, right? Because, like I said, Days Gone is split. You got a decent amount of community that's just like, even within PlayStation. I'm not even talking about Xbox or PC, right? Even though this is on PC, whatever. But within the PlayStation community, you have a lot of PlayStation gamers that are like, oh, whatever. This is so useless. And you have PlayStation gamers that like it, right? But that's split. Metal Gear Solid 4 remastering, right? Or remake, right? Whatever's the best decision for the game, majority will be all in on it. Because one, you're gonna have PlayStation gamers that never owned the PS3 that's gonna be like, oh snap. I always wanted to play this game, but I didn't buy a PS3 because it just wasn't a good console in their opinion. I was primary 360 or whatever. I'm so glad I'll be able to play this game now, and it's gonna have 60 frames, better settings. You're gonna see the huge jump over the original. So that's gonna be one. Two, the fans that do like Metal Gear Solid 4, they're gonna love it too. I'm gonna love it. So you're not going to get any arguments from the Metal Gear Solid 4 fans. You're not going to get much argument or any argument from the PS3 fans because a lot of them didn't even play the game, and now they finally can in its best version and stuff like that, right? And they have access to it for the first time ever when they didn't have access to it before because they never owned the PS3, right? So across the board, it's just a win-win, and it's a better representation of the remaster remake strategy. I think there's a lot of titles that helped the PlayStation 3 salvage its name, its brand name, its mind share towards the end of the gen. And I don't see why Sony's not going after those games that pretty much gave the PS4 a fighting chance to come back. Because that's how I feel the PS3. The PS3's generation ended with games that got people to be like, that's what I'm talking about, Sony. Not this Blu-ray bullshit, not the folding at home, not even the play at home, all this other weird shit and cell processor shit. It was the games. It should have always been about the games. That's what we want. And I think Sony was able to get that mindshare back with the PS3. And that, since that's how the generation ended with the mindshare, that stepped off with good success with PS4 because now people took how PS3 ended and moved it towards the PS4, and PS4 just ran away with it, so it gave PS4 the opportunity to run away with it, and at the time become the most successful console, which then carried over to the PS5, and now it's the most successful console in terms of metrics, revenue, profit, all that stuff, right? But I think with with the remake remaster, Sony took the easy way, which was always just remake remaster PS4 because it's much easier, right? It probably takes more work, but put in the work. I think remastering, remaking PS3 games would have, or still can, reap so much benefits for PlayStation. A lot of gamers want those games, right? It would be a huge improvement of what's there on the PC. Because even if they did do backwards compatibility and they said, "Hey, we found a way, through emulation, we finally worked it. We backwards compatible in terms of, be able to digitally play and download. Now, that's not going to answer for the disc gamers, right? If you have a PS3 disc, that's over. That the whole owning the disc on the PS3 and being able to put it in the console and play it, that's over with, right? So that's not going to be a solution for that. You're going to have to rebuy the game digitally, and those are the ones that they decide to, um, remaster and remake, right? But if they did that, let's say if they did Metal Gear Solid 3 and be like, hey, it's fully backwards compatible, and that's all it is, it's just backwards compatible, it's not gonna play well. You're gonna have to accept the fault of the PS3 and how those games are, right? If you play Infamous 1 and 2, you're gonna have to accept 30 frames and 720p loading and all this. It's gonna be a bad experience. It's not gonna be something you're used to, right? You want Infamous 1 and 2 to have a full remake, right? Get that 60 frames, get the better settings, improved animations, improve physics, right? Especially that game had a lot of physics to it, a lot of destructions, especially like when you create like you know, the tornado malevolent, that electrical storm and everything just like, getting destroyed in the city. That could be dramatically improved, right? You can add building physics that are more destructible. There's so much you can do that really advances that game to the next level, right? You could destroy the bridges or the train tracks and stuff like that. And then you probably could add where, like, because of destruction, part of the, subway system, the overhead subway system is destroyed, but then you see people in the city just naturally rebuild it and stuff like that, right? You could add a lot of, details to that game now that just wasn't possible on the PS3. And people won't have an issue with that, right? So I think Sony, if they have this remastering remake strategy, which clearly they do, they need to put in a little bit more work and go after the PS3. PS3 is like the biggest issue with the lack of backwards compatibility. But I think even if, let's say, Sony doesn't figure out the PS3 backwards compatibility, I've seen remasters, remakes of those games and just complete overhaul or huge improvement with the animation, things you can do, people won't have a problem with it. Just like Oblivion. Oblivion's a great example of people not having issues. Ninja Gaiden 2 is another one. Ninja Gaiden 2 remaster. Not an issue because that was a PS3 game, right? And before that was a 360 game, right? 360 PS3 game. So no issues with that. There's just, PS3 games of that generation being remastered remake will be very welcome because there'll be such a huge improvement over those games. So that's my thought. That's what I think. Sony needs to just focus on primarily getting those games remastered remakes, and I think they will be very welcome in the PlayStation community. Absolutely welcome to PlayStation community. But you let me know what you think. You think that Sony should, like, yes, focus on PS3 because they're not really focusing on that at all. They're still going after PS4 games. To me, that's the wrong platform. They need to go one more generation back, get the PS3, and I think very few people will have a problem with it. So much more people will be going after those remakes and remasters from the PS3 eras between the people that never owned the PS3 and the people who have played the PS3, because it will be such a far departure and improvement as compared to PS4. But that's what I feel. What I think. You let me know what you think in the comment section. Let's have the discussion. This is your only friend, Porter Rock 77. Your only friend is YouTube Streets. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and just let me know in the comment section what you think. Check out my Friday Night Live I had previously. If you missed it, or if you're new to the channel, just check it out. The cards over here will help you access it easily. Of course, also you also see the image to subscribe to the channel. Anyway, you guys take care. Have a great Sunday.
Grand opening